Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. This session is going to last about 30 minutes and we're going to be looking at our fruition product this morning, and we'll also be looking at how the flight results page can be optimized to help consumers to meet their needs on your website. So the data that I'm going to be presenting comes from our most recent Airlines desktop study in Australia, but it also has some examples from other places around the world. So I'm going to spend about 30 minutes going through the presentation, and then at the end of the session we can open it up for any questions. You can use the chat box on your screen to type any questions in, and we'll make sure to get them answered in the session today. So I'm just going to introduce myself quickly before we get going. My name is Becca Wistrike. I'm a client advisor with Global Reviews, and I'm based in our Europe office, but I work on projects in different industries around the world. So first off, we thought it would be good to share some of our current clients with you, just to highlight the breadth of industries that we're working in. So some of these clients are included in our benchmark studies, which run multiple times a year to measure performance across digital marketing, digital sales effectiveness. We also do bespoke projects with some of our clients, and they'd be looking at solving very specific and often quite complex business issues for those clients. Some of the industries that we're working in at the moment include energy, higher learning, insurance across health, motor and home, and banking as well. So as I mentioned, we'd be looking at the fruition product today. So this is the research pathway for that product. And it looks at 3 stages of the consumer purchase journey using a combination of consumer mission-based tasks and also a features and functions audit, which is completed by Global Reviews. So it starts out in the discover stage with how consumers research to find a provider that meets their needs in your industry. So how many consumers think of your brand before they start researching? Where do they go online to find a provider? What sort of things are important to them at each stage of the journey? Then we look more closely at the consider stage, which looks at consumers' experiences on yours and your competitors' websites. And then we look in the act phase of the journey, which is about purchase. So this includes multiple facets of the site, so including things like what your homepage tells consumers about your brand and your products, how easy it is to find your range, to find a specific product to match a specific need, and what the application and purchase process is like for consumers as well. So as we move through the presentation, I'm going to explain in more detail what each of these stages looks like from a research perspective, but that just gives you a broad overview of what the research pathway is for the fruition product. So our methodology is designed to replicate the consumer experience as closely as we possibly can. So we work with consumers who are actively looking to purchase a product in your industry. We work with different panel providers. You can see a few of them on screen there in different markets to make sure that we're getting the right people for every project. Participants then go off and complete the tasks remotely in their own environment as they would do if they were doing this naturally. They only evaluate one website for those consider and act stages, and we make sure that they're not evaluating a website that's their current provider, so we can avoid familiarity with the site and get a clean read on what's coming back. So we're going to take a whistle-stop tour of the discover stage of the consumer journey now. So in this stage, we send consumers off to do research online to find a provider that meets their needs. So they start basically with a blank browser window. They can go anywhere they like. They can search anywhere in order to complete the task. So we don't only look at the journey that they take. We also ask them a variety of attitudinal questions at this stage. So about what their preferences are, what their experiences were, what the outcomes were, to better understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so not just looking at what they do, but also why they're doing it. We also make sure to capture the voice of the consumer in open questions throughout the journey. So we ask different questions at a variety of points where people are allowed to free-form answer. We get a lot of richness of insight from that approach. So in the discover phase, everybody that takes part in the study completes the same task. So we're going to take a quick look at some more data from the discover phase. And in order to demonstrate some of the insights that can come out of this, we're going to use some live data from our most recent study in the airlines industry. So this study had a total sample of 228 people. And in order to focus a little bit, we're going to look at Qantas as the brand in this section. So the first thing we do is we ask participants to name up to 5 airline brands that come to mind. So you can see here that Qantas had pretty high recall at 75%, and this is completely spontaneous. Then we ask them whether at this stage, before they've done any tasks, they have an initial preference for a brand that they might select. So you can see here Qantas are chosen by 17% at initial preference before any research has happened. Then we send them off to complete that task that you've just seen, where they have to go and do research to identify a provider that meets their needs. During that task, 17% of these participants visited the Qantas website. So after all of their research, we ask them again, who would you shortlist for consideration for your provider? So they might have a number of brands at this stage that they would consider. 37% of that sample have chosen Qantas to put on the shortlist. And finally, we ask them to select their one final preference. After all of their research is done, they've considered all of their reasons for choosing a brand. 14% have chosen Qantas. So let's see how that stacks up against competitors. So these are the top 4 recalled brands. So that first question that we asked people, which brands can you think of? We can see that Qantas is actually the only brand of these 4 to have less consumers that choose it at the final preference than choose it at initial preference. So we can also see that despite having a lower recall than Qantas, Virgin is outperforming it across all of the other touch points, so initial preference, visit, shortlist, and final preference. So if we had the time of a full workshop session, we'd investigate this in a lot more detail than we have time for today. But for the purposes of this webinar, we're just going to take a top-level look at what's going on across the touch points between Virgin and Qantas in the Discover stage. So when we look at the drivers for initial preference, we can see that brand relationship is the #1 driver across the board. So both Qantas and Virgin Australia are actually over-indexing in this area. Both brands under-index on providing the best prices. But what's interesting is that Virgin Australia do score higher than Qantas here. So consumers perceive Virgin Australia to have better prices. And while rewards and added extras aren't amongst the top drivers when we look at the total sample, they are important to those who choose Virgin, and Qantas are under-indexing in that area compared to Virgin. So then we move on to having a quick look at the reasons for shortlisting. So 44% shortlisted Virgin and 37% shortlisted Qantas. So can we see any obvious reasons within the drivers that might explain why that's happening? So other than some slight over-indexing on easy to understand and best offers, Virgin and Qantas are actually very evenly matched at this stage. So that leads us to question what else could be leading to Virgin being a more popular option at shortlist. So if we take a quick look at the consumer research journey, we might find some answers to that. So we can see that 77% of participants began the process with an initial preference in mind. When they were directed to find a flight, most go directly to a search engine and they enter a general search term. And this is typically the destination of the flight that they're looking for. And around half the amount of people who searched for a general term searched for a specific airline. Having found all of the options available to them through airline brand websites, comparison sites, over a third are swayed away from their initial preference to another brand. When we analysed the search terms that were used by consumers in this research journey, we found that the most common keyword phrase was Melbourne to Brisbane flights. So the general one that most people are using. When we replicated that search, we can see that Qantas actually doesn't show up on the first 2 pages of results, but Virgin and Tiger Air do. So all of those consumers who use this search are actually more likely to end up viewing Virgin Australia flights than Qantas flights, just because of the search results. The Qantas results are displayed exclusively when somebody searches for the brand name. There's no competitor results showing up, but only 7% use Qantas as a keyword compared to 14% that use Virgin as a keyword. Of those who visit the Qantas site, only 8% find that website from a general keyword search. So in order to locate that site, really they need to be searching the brand term to find it easily. So what we can see here is that Qantas's lack of search result optimization means it's actually harder to find through general searching than some of its competitor brands. So that may be hurting its chances of being shortlisted. And if it's not shortlisted, that's hurting its chances of being chosen at final preference. So looking at the final preference drivers, when we get to this stage, we can see that while having used the brand before is obviously still at the top of the drivers here, we can see that the other drivers have shifted considerably from initial preference. So at initial preference, we saw the lead drivers were brand relationship and price. And at final preference, we can see that it's ease of matching to their needs that drives consumers to choose one particular brand. So you can see their website helped me to find flight options quickly. The website is easy to understand and use, and the website made it easy to locate flights and offers for my needs are sitting right up there at the top. This leads us quite nicely into the consider stage, where we'll look at how a website can be optimized in order to deliver against a consumer's desire to be able to match to their needs more easily. So the consider and act stages of the research pathway focus on how effectively you can engage consumers, how much your site helps them match a product or a service to their needs, how easy it is to purchase that product or service from you. Looking at the methodology, it's made up of 3 main components. So the first is consumer tasks. These reflect the research journey on site for your particular product. We measure consumer success, satisfaction, confidence. We analyze the ways that consumers navigate around your site, what problems they might encounter in that process. We also ask a lot of attitudinal questions. So that covers things like their preferences for researching, what's most important to them, do they like the experience, and of course we're capturing consumer voice throughout as well. We also complete a features and functions audit. So that's completed by the global reviews team. And it looks at both your own site, but also your competitors' sites across all of the same key criteria. So it looks at over 250 criteria of the site. And it doesn't just look at things like navigation and tools, but also content and quality of content on the site. That gives you a quick overview of how we approach this. So in the consumer tasks section, we have 5 tasks that we set in the latest airlines study. At this stage, the sample is split. So some participants will visit your website and some participants will visit your competitor's website. Each participant only reviews one site. And as I mentioned before, we make sure that they're not looking at the site of their current provider so that we're not encountering familiarity issues. So first, the participants asked to go away and have a look at the page, rate it against a number of criteria, how visually appealing it is, how much it encourages them to browse further into the site. Then they're asked to find the area of the website that lets them compare all available flights. So this is, we'll give them specific detail. Obviously here it is a one-way flight from Melbourne to Sydney on September 1st, but it's basically designed to see how easily consumers can locate the range on your website. The third task is to find a very specific flight. This is the match to needs task, and this is about locating a product on your website that matches their very specific need and how easy that is, what that process looks like, and any issues that they might encounter. And the final task is to find the page that has the best deals on flights from Melbourne to LA in this case. And so that's looking at what the experience is like for a consumer trying to find deals on your website. So taking a look at some of the results that might come out of this stage of a study, these are the top level benchmark scores. These tell us how brands are performing in relation to their competition, basically. This score is made up of all of the scores from the consumer tasks and our internal audit, and they're put together in order to look across the consider and act stages. It doesn't include the discover stage at this point. So we can see that Qantas are performing better than the competition, but it is actually a fairly even playing field with Virgin Australia here when we look at the overall benchmark scores. So for this section, we're not actually going to focus on one brand in particular, and instead we're going to look at one specific task. We're going to look at the match to needs task. As we've seen at the end of the discover stage there, the final preference drivers, that being able to easily match products to needs is a key driver for final preference within this industry. So here are some of the results from the match to needs task in the latest study. This chart shows how each of the brands performed in the consumer task. So what we can see here, which is interesting, is that the success scores are low, whereas the confidence, satisfaction, and evaluation scores are high. So let's take Virgin Australia as an example. So that's the first bar in the chart in the dark blue. So 29% of participants succeeded at this task on Virgin's site, which is quite a low number, but it scores 83% in confidence and 84% in satisfaction. So what that tells us is that those who got the task wrong didn't know that they had got the task wrong. They thought they'd found the correct flight that they were asked to find. So we can glean from this that there might be a problem here in terms of how information is being presented on the flight results page, and it's leading to consumers being confused about what it is that they're looking at. So all of the brands in this benchmark that we have looked at are actually suffering from this to varying degrees. So what we're going to do today is have a look at how the flight results page could be optimized in order to help consumers match a flight to their needs more easily. So first off, most airlines feature basic filter and sort options on the flight results page. So for example, Qantas have a short list of predefined sort options, as you can see here. They don't allow users to filter or sort based on multiple needs at the same time. Singapore Airlines offers more specific sort options, including things like ascending and descending options for the same sorts, but they don't allow users to filter past that. Virgin allow users to view all fare options for flights or to reduce just to cheapest fares, and Emirates offer the option to view non-Emirates flights only instead of showing multiple different airlines for different legs of the same journey. These are all quite basic options. They don't really help users to tailor the experience enough to help them meet their needs easily. So having a look at JetBlue here, we can see that advanced information is being presented on this page and that might help users match their needs more easily. So users can filter flights based on whether or not they're refundable. They can easily sort results in ascending or descending order against a variety of criteria. And that's presented quite straightforward there with arrows to indicate which way the options have been sorted. They can sort within the fare tiers based on price and can see the number of seats available against each fare. And JetBlue also makes use of pop-ups. So they're using pop-ups to deliver more advanced information. So for example, clicking on the time of the flight opens a pop-up of flight details, including things like information about timekeeping record. Users can also access a pop-up detailing fare inclusions and summaries without having to select the fare first. So they get all of that information presented to them really easily in an overlay on that page. Google Flights is offering some really advanced search functionality. So this is before the flight results page. And that means that users can tailor the flight results before they've even got there. So they can filter against things like the class of the flight, the number of stops, the airline alliances, outbound time window, return time window, the duration of the flight even. They can also do things like browsing flight options based on a map. They can choose dates based on a graph of price, so they can see when the price is likely to be lower or higher before they choose. They also allow for the ultimate level of flexibility in terms of selecting flexible dates or even a flexible destination based on interest. Skyscanner also allows users to browse flights without inputting a destination, so they can search flights to everywhere and see what different flight options they have and what the cost would be against those different flights. So all of that's happening before the user's even gotten as far as the flight results page. Aggregators are often a very good example of much more advanced filter options. So allowing users to tailor the flight results page to a very specific need using different options. So TripAdvisor on the left, presenting its sort options across the top of the flight results. So it's very obvious to users what the options are for sorting and which ones have been activated as well. So it uses a variety of factors to put together this very interesting sort option called best value. So that's offering something to consumers that a lot of other flight results pages are not offering. Both TripAdvisor and Skyscanner are offering a number of advanced filter options. So much like Google Flights, they're looking at things like the outbound flight time window, arrival time window, journey duration, number of stops in a journey. The filter options have been called out really clearly in the design as well, which is an important thing to note. So they're either shown in bold or perhaps called out in a different color so that it's very easy for users to scan through them and decide what they want to filter against. So the next information a consumer will encounter on the flight results page is fare information. And much like the sort and filter options, most airlines actually are only offering a basic comparison table of fare inclusions. So for example, on Virgin Australia, it's not possible to compare fare inclusions across fare tiers. So it's just one tier at a time. The only way to find out the actual cost of some of the inclusions is to trawl through a very lengthy and quite complex terms and conditions document. Qantas also provides quite a limited comparison table, but it does include costs and amounts for things like points and credits. Again, though, the only option for more information is a full fare conditions link, which opens a lengthy document in a pop-up window. And Jetstar doesn't actually include costs in their comparison table and directs users to multiple different terms and conditions documents for more information. So they're providing quite basic information on screen, but if a user wants more complex information, it's actually quite difficult to find that. So one thing that we've looked at here is that layering information can make it more easy for consumers to compare. So using Swiss as an example, they reveal information in 3 layers. So first they produce the fare tiers and what the from cost would be, so the lowest cost, for example, per tier. Once a user selects the tier, then they open the fare types within that tier, and an overview comparison of each of those fare types is revealed. And then by clicking on the compare link, users can view a side-by-side comparison table of selected fare type versus other fare types. Looking at Singapore Airlines, they use information overlays in order to offer more detail while retaining a very simple fare overview design. So their initial design is actually very stripped back. Users can click on different icons to reveal more. So for example, clicking on the icon next to Air Miles brings up an overlay with details about amounts of miles. This could be improved further by offering side-by-side comparison tables as an overlay. So at the moment, they're only offering information about one at a time rather than side-by-side. So for a user, it would be difficult enough to have a look at 2 fares next to each other. Qatar is quite different again. So they present all of their fare options in a row on the flight results page rather than just the tiers as you've seen in the previous 2. Apologies, technical difficulty. So clicking on a fare presents the user with an overview of that fare type. They can see fare details, flight features, and they can scroll to see more information. And clicking on compare fares actually opens this pop-up window, which has a detailed like-for-like comparison table for all of the fare options available, again, rather than just within a specific tier. So what we've been looking at so far has all been on desktop sites. It's important to remember that many users will actually visit your website on a mobile device. So their ability to match their needs, which is obviously very important to them shouldn't be impeded by the fact that they're on a mobile device. So in the latest study that we ran, we saw that Air New Zealand performed really strongly in the consumer tasks on the mobile. So they're offering multiple filter options to help users find flight options that match their needs. Filters are offered at different levels so that consumers can fully understand what the impact of their preferences will be on the flight results page. Singapore Airlines performed really well in the features and functions audit because they're allowing users to do things like booking different elements of their trip from the same search. They can also use member points to book. They can set travel priorities easily for tailored flight results. From the results page, they can also edit their search. They can easily sort all of the options presented to them. So Singapore Airlines mobile flight results page could actually be improved slightly. If you have a look here on the right, there's a lot of information being displayed on the page. And when we think about a mobile device, it's quite a small screen area. So if, for example, Singapore Airlines collapsed some of their information into accordion sections, for example, things like this very detailed flight information, that might improve the user experience on site. As we've seen already when we were looking at desktop, aggregators often offer much more advanced options, and that rings true on mobile as well. So we've got Google Flights again on the left-hand side, and they're offering consistent search and filter options. So that kind of carries through from the initial search onto the results page. So the user can use the same options to change what they've searched for without having to go back to the search. The other thing that Google Flights are doing really well is that multiple filters can be chosen at the same time so that consumers can match variable requirements at once rather than having to look at one thing and then the other. And then although Booking.com isn't a flights aggregator, it's actually a very interesting example of advanced filtering. So they provide a huge range of filter options. And some of the interesting things that they're doing is that they're showing on each filter exactly how many results each one contains. They also use these big, clearly labeled buttons on a mobile device, which makes it very easy for a consumer to touch select which filter they want to activate. So to recap, the three most important factors for consumers when they're looking for flights in final preference for choosing a provider is that the website made it easy to locate flights or offers for their needs. The website was easy to understand and use, and the website helped them to find flight options quickly. So their greatest desire really is to be quickly guided to flights that they can easily see meet their needs. So what features and functions could we implement to deliver against this need? So firstly, advanced search options mean that a user could tailor to their needs before they've even reached the flight results page. So things that we could consider in that area include the number of stops in a long-haul flight, for example, the window of time for departure or arrival, the duration of a flight, and this option to browse destinations or even dates based on other criteria. Advanced filter options on the results page mean that a user can easily manipulate the results that they're being displayed to fit their needs. So things to consider here: sort results by multiple needs, sorting by ascending or descending against all the sort options, being able to filter flights by various things like whether they're refundable or not, filtering out fare options based on price, filtering again by the idea of a window of time for departure or arrival, and including more advanced sort options like we saw on TripAdvisor's best value flights option. The third thing is to ensure that filter options are labeled clearly, that they're in easy to understand language so that consumers understand what impact selecting a filter option will have on their flight results, and that they're highlighted within the design. So as we saw a couple of slides ago, using bold or colored font to make sure that it's really clear what the options are. Some more tips here: do not hide the sort options in a drop-down menu. So again, TripAdvisor showed this. They had their sort options expanded across the top of the flight results. It was really easy for users to see what their options were. Allowing users to compare fare options without needing to select a flight and fare type. So for example, using pop-up or overlay. layering information about fares so that it's more easily consumable, using contextual information overlays to provide full information while still retaining a nice, straightforward design, not cluttering things with loads of information on screen at the same time, and providing actual prices, actual luggage allowances, miles, etc. in the comparison tables, rather than directing consumers away to complex documents in order to find that information. So if you are interested to hear more about what it is that we do, we'd love to meet you to discuss how we might be able to work together on any business challenges that you might have at the moment, whether that requires bespoke project design or it might be better suited to one of our existing benchmark products. So you can reach out to any of the guys on screen at the moment. Neil and Matt work in our Europe office, and they also cover North America and Canada, as well as all European markets. And Tony and Darren in our Australian office for any Australasian markets that you might be interested in. So that's it for the session today. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to listen to what we have to say and hearing all about our Fruition benchmark product. I hope that it's been an interesting session for you. Thank you. If I end